Andre, first of all, I always thank the guests for giving me some of their time. And yet again, you're somebody who I've been looking forward to talking to for a long time, especially after watching Mortal the other night, which obviously we're here to have a good chat about. So thank you for giving me some of your time today.
Oh no, my pleasure. It's great talking to you, and oh yeah, oh, it's very exciting. Talk about Mortal as well.
Oh, yeah. Before we get on to Mortal, though, I can't have you on the show and not talk about one of my favourite films, not just of yours, but of one of my favourite films. And it is, of course, Troll Hunter. You've talked many times to many people about Troll Hunter. Uh, and me and Tina watched it the other night again. Not as we need any excuse to ever watch it again, but I can't believe it's 10 years ago that this came out. It's gone by so quick. What's the last 10 years been like for you since making Troll Hunter and it just blew up everywhere and it got the attention that it so richly deserved?
No, it was amazing. I mean, the last 10 years obviously is like a dream come true for a beginner filmmaker who hopes to be able to make movies for the rest of your life in a way. And then to have a movie hit and be so successful and so beloved as it actually has become is an amazing thing. Something, it's a one in a million to be able to do it. So I'm very, very lucky to have experienced that. And Hollywood came for me after the movie came out, and I was given the opportunity to meet all these amazing people over there making movies, and I was eventually able to get to The Autopsy of Jane Doe, a fantastic screenplay that I was being given this chance to direct, and that went well as well. And it was a total opposite. I was able to prove that I could do something completely different than Troll Hunter as
Wow.
well, because I needed to, because you can't keep doing found footage movies for the rest of your life in a way. And it's not. So that was, and then Guillermo del Toro, comes with his movie, and also Mortal, which is a more of a home cooked movie here in Norway. But it's it's been a dream come true in every possible way.
And I love different countries' folklores, their mythology, and of course that's a big part of Troll Hunter. It's a big part of Mortal. I've got to ask you, Andre, though, have you ever seen anything or heard third hand through friends any sort of strange happenings or anything that's gone on?
Like in a supernatural
Yeah, yeah.
ghosts, or I mean, you always have friends who have seen something they feel is a ghost. I'm very grounded. I'm very much, in a way, almost a non-believer in things I can't touch. But I'm in awe of the possibilities that are there. That's why I think all my movies, in a way, deal with the supernatural, but in a very grounded way. It's basically my perspective, but looking at something that I can't explain.
Yeah. And of course, Norway
Yeah,
has got such a rich history of mythology as well, hasn't it?
yeah,
Is
yeah,
that
it does.
and is that something? Because I was looking at because of course with everything that's going on in the world, everything's changed. Especially for you as the filmmaker, projects put on hold. And I was looking at one of the projects that you've got lined up, which made me smile as well. I thought, oh, I can't wait for this one. Again, set in Norway, to do with UFOs as well. And with that rich mythology of Norway also comes the beautiful scenery, the landscapes. Again, watching both Troll Hunter and Mortal, it seems no matter where the camera is, it's just a beautiful vista. It must be something that's great for you, again, as a filmmaker coming from there, that you've got this rich tapestry of not only history, but of beautiful scenery to tap into as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It is something I discovered almost on Troll Hunter. Is some of these areas we were filming in, I hadn't actually been to those areas before, and they were just awe-inspiring, so amazing. And even though you know them, you've seen pictures, you've been in a neighborhood through your life, to just stand there and be able to film it is amazing. I mean, it basically becomes our substitute for big budget Hollywood movie sets.
Yeah.
We have our natural vista, and you kind of have to use that. And also, I think the Norwegian population is very close to nature. The moment we have a vacation time, in a way, the first thing we do is just run out into nature. So it's kind of, we have a very closeness with nature in the population. and in our mindset. Yeah.
And it comes through in all of your films, like I said. But I think one of the things, one of the opposite side to that, with you working within nature like that, the weather has got to be something that poses a few difficulties during filming, because the weather can just change. I guess it can change just within the hour from one extreme to the other, can't it?
Yeah, I mean, especially there is a big scene which you of course know now, in on this bridge in Mortal, where we had to close down that bridge for 5 days to be able to shoot that sequence. And we came to set at 2 a.m. in the morning because the light came up at 3:30 in the morning. So we were ready to start shooting as soon as the light was up. And we closed one lane, and the other lane we closed for 15 minutes at a time. So the cars were just piling up everywhere. But the weather, of course, kept changing like crazy throughout the day,
Mm-hmm.
because it's in the middle of a valley in the western side of Norway where the weather is very shifty. And it was so the VFX company had to work through all these shots, I don't know, 150 shots, and not just to calibrate the weather in the clouds and the sky in every shot, but in addition, there is a story to tell there. The weather is
Yeah.
coming in. So we had to create this journey of the weather in that whole sequence.
God, that just
So
that
it's
just adds so many more problems to you as a director. And another thing to think about when you're on set filming this thing.
yeah, but then you have to rely on your VFX supervisor, who was actually a UK based, who's a friend of mine from the UK, who I work with on the Autopsy of Jane Doe, Stephen Coren, and he has to stay on top of everything on set and say, okay, we can fix that, we can fix that. So we constantly in conversation with your crew about how to handle these issues when you come to post, and when you edit, you have to pay attention to it. But yeah, on set you almost have to ignore it
Mm-hmm.
to a degree, because your main concern on set is how the actors work and the actual storytelling of the story, and all the other stuff you have to almost have to ignore
Well,
as best
that's
as you can.
one of the things I love about your films, Andre, as well, is they do have effects in them, and they're very effective as well, especially given the budgets that you're working within as well. You're on a restricted budget compared to a lot of the the huge multiplex things that are thrown out at us. But your movies always at their heart have characters that you care about and you feel empathy for, and then whenever anything happens to them, which may or may not involve the effects, you care for them a lot more. Whatever happens to them, good or bad, it impacts you as a viewer more, and that seems to be something that's taken through all of the films that you do, and it seems to be a thing from European filmmakers and especially from Norwegian filmmakers. I mean, we watched The Wave and The Quake over the last few years as well, and they're Norwegian films. And again, they could be made as huge, big blockbusters where it's all effects, but at the heart, you care for the characters. What's it like putting a film together where there's going to be effects, but you as a filmmaker ground everything within the characters and keep the viewer involved in what's happening to them, despite everything that's going on around them?
I mean, I'm more preoccupied with human psychology than I am with special effects.
Mm.
I love special effects driven movies, and I know how to handle a shoot in a way with lots of effects. And I also know the enormous possibilities the digital effects world has given us over the last 2 decades. Basically, since Jurassic Park, which was the first huge evidence of the possibilities that digital work do give us. But I mean, in a way, it's all about. Actually, I remember the line producer on the Autopsy of Jane Doe told me that, okay, one day when you're on a big set with $100 million and everything is like huge around you, remember that it's all about you standing on set with 2 actors in front of camera. You have your cameraman or camerawoman, and you have yourself, and that's all that matters. And I do really agree with that. It's all about telling a story of human beings. That's who we relate to. And you have to be conscious of that. But also, in addition, it's natural. You are conscious of it. It's what you want to say. You want to tell the story of Eric and Christine and Hans in Trollhunter. And you want to tell the story about human beings. And I think that even a movie like The Joker, which was out in the last fall, is the evidence. That's a movie that is a super intimate little portrait, in a way, of a guy who has a lot of problems in his life.
Mm-hmm.
And a very negative view on the world in a way, but it became like $1 billion hit. So clearly, the audience is interested in watching movies about people
Yeah.
as much as spectacle. If you give them a good movie about people, they'll come.
Yeah. I mean, I, as much as everybody, when the special effects first started, all the CGI was wowed by them. And that works to a point, but I think to draw you in, you've really got to care about the characters and the actors. And have you got any particular process when you're writing this? Because because you're a screenwriter as well. Is there any particular process that you go through when you're creating the characters and the situations that they're in, or does it just come to you organically and you sit there and write stuff down as and when it comes to you?
I mean, I think that ideally I have a process of exploring the world out of context with a storyline first. So what would they go through? What's interesting to watch these characters go through? How would they work as human beings if you pull them through a situation like this? And how would they react if they go through that? How could we achieve the maximum interesting moments for these characters? So if totally out of context, you just work up, I don't know, 200 scenes or ideas around what phases in their story that could be interesting. And then I start to like, okay, how can that work as a cohesive move, move forward? How can it work as a storyline? And I am actually quite preoccupied with structure because I do think that structure in the end is something that is very crucial for movies, as opposed to a novel where you can kind of tell the novel in 100 pages or 1,200 pages, and you can weave in and out of your mind in a way as you please. A movie is images of the practical world. You can't really be inside somebody's head, or it's hard. And therefore it becomes, and also a movie has more, it's a very simple story usually, a movie compared to a book. And I kind of divide it into 4 acts and sequences. And when I've had all this information gathered in a way, put it up all on the wall, then I put my structure up on the wall, and then I try to like slot it into becoming a movie structure.
I love as well the dark humor that you put into your films as well. Again, rewatching Troll Hunter again the other night, and even with Immortal, there's those touches of dark humor where there's peril, there's excitement, there's sadness, there's happiness, and then there's bits where we were sat and we couldn't help but giggling as well because you'd put this little bit of dark humor in there. That seems to be something that you love to put into your films too.
Yeah, and I gravitate towards it. I mean, I didn't write The Autopsy of Jane Doe, but there is a lot of subtle humor in that movie as well, and that came from the writers, and it came also from the actors on set. I remember Emil Hirsch, actually, he improvised a lot of little humorous things. Some things that didn't end up in the movie, actually, but they were really funny, but we had to keep such a strict structure on that movie. Mm-hmm. But also in Trollhunter, I always wrote it as a comedy. Initially, it was a very dark comedy, and then I talked to the producer, and we kind of lightened it up a little bit. It was very much like, my inspiration for Trollhunter initially was actually Man Bites Dog. If you ever saw that film, black and white Belgian,
great film.
That was like it was a documentary, not a found footage movie, just a documentary about this guy who has a crazy endeavor in front of him and the camera crew who gets more and more involved as the movie goes along. And that kind of was the blueprint for Trollhunter, adding in elements of Ghostbusters and Jurassic Park, essentially. Slightly different, yeah.
And how did Mortal first get it, the beginnings then? What was because it is, I was going to say, what is the origins of Mortal, because Mortal itself is an origin story too. So
yeah,
how did that first begin with you?
I mean, it was an idea. I remember a producer named Brian Kavanagh Jones, who's a producer on the movie. He called me and said, I love Trollhunter. I met him in LA, but one day he just called me out of the blue and said, I love Trollhunter so much. Is it possible for you to come up with another idea that is rooted in Norwegian mythology, the Norwegian world, in a way? And I kind of spent a bunch of weeks figuring this out, and I pitched him like 7, 8 ideas. And in the end, this one was clearly the one that I gravitated towards, and he agreed. And we discussed a little bit, and then I wrote out like a 8-10 page document with the story. And it's kind of the same story. This was like back in 2012, 13, a long time ago already. And it was just like, and then started working to flesh it out. And I started working also with a writer named Jeff, who's credited on the movie, to work out a script. And eventually, when production started airing, I got a very good friend of mine to help me make it more emotional and tweak the storyline while I was actually prepping the movie, because then it became very busy for me to be doing rewrites. So we were just like honing the script for 6 months before the shooting started.
Yeah. So then when shooting starts, I take it is there any leeway at all that you maybe change something on the set? You see something within a performance from one of the actors and you might want to change it a little bit, or is it locked down solid and that's it?
No, I mean, I have a tendency to, especially when I've written basically it's my own story in a way, then I feel very free to just do whatever.
Yeah.
Of course, within the basic parameters of what you're shooting. I mean, you already made a schedule. And if the scene takes place on a bridge, obviously you can't change it to, middle of a city. Instead, just because you came up with the idea, then you're sticking to the bridge scene. But I always fiddle with the dialogue, especially even the night before, and some little go over just knowing what we've shot already the day before. I realized, okay, wait a second, that line actually now has to change. Yeah. And that the physical movement in that scene has to evolve into that for this scene to make sense now, because we did a little change on set. You're always compromising when you're making a movie. And a compromise doesn't need to hurt the movie. Yeah. It just needs to be a compromise that reality versus your dream idea of what you think the movie should have been. At some point, they're going to collide and it might not quite, it might not fit perfectly. And then you have to be agile and live with that. And actually, that's some of the fun of filmmaking, is how every day is so unpredictable within parameters. But then you have actors who have to like live the scene. It has to, it just has to work. And you have all the challenges of filmmaking, the physical challenges of a crew and set and equipment, and it's fun. I mean, it's a dream come true to be able to be a director. I mean, how
have you matured as a director from the very beginnings, even from before Troll Hunter? How do you feel that you've matured now, and how has your filmmaking skills and the way you approach making a film changed during this time period?
I think I'm more in tune with actors' needs, because that's the thing that you experience. When you shot on a movie, you shoot 1,000 shots, and you do them 3 to 8 times over and over again. So you shoot 10,000 shots in a way on any given movie, and with communication with the actors. So eventually that becomes you hone that dialogue. You understand what they need more and more, and how to achieve certain things. Mm-hmm. So I think that also I think I've refined. I'm working on refining an expression, a cinematic expression that is my own in a way, together with my DOP, who I've shot 3 movies with now. Sorry, and it's and I think that that's also a big fun thing, is to be able to discover yourself discover a certain focused art within your own expression, and really try to work it regardless of the production situation, regardless of what type of story you're telling. Try to find your own language and your own artistry within it. That's kind of my goal and hope to do. Yeah.
And it must give you some, not comfort, but just a little bit more just happiness that those regular faces around you, like you said, you've got a small team who's worked with you during the past 3 films, and if you carry on with that, and then you get to know how each other work, and you can almost have that unspoken communication on set, that one person could be doing something without even being told to do it, and that will help with the production process going forward too.
Yeah, and some days you're so on it on set, and other days you're like very tired, or you're drained, or you like haven't quite solved the scene, and you're hoping that it will solve itself in a way a little bit more on set with the help of everybody else rather than just in your own mind. And then it's good to be able to lean on sometimes like your wonderful core crew, like my DOP on certain days on Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. He would almost have to take over the shooting. We talk about it in advance, and then I would like follow his lead on how the scene should be shot, because he had a clear vision of that specific scene than I did. So at that point, the trust is 100%.
Yeah.
And then you can really, really lean on the people around you, which is a big thing in filmmaking. You have to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I should imagine so, definitely. And I've deliberately avoided any spoilers to do with Mortal, of course. And I was telling you before we started recording that, of course, watched it, really, really enjoyed it. And I do encourage everybody that's watching this and listening to the audio show to go and watch it as soon as it's out. It's out on DVD over here from Signature Entertainment on August the 24th. And it is very, very well worth watching. I know going forward, and again, trying not to give any spoilers away, the way that this ends, I know you've talked about this before too, but it does set up more from this. I said about it being an origin story, and there does seem to be a lot more to tell. And of course, you're busy already in the backlog with all the craziness in the world. I take it this is something that you do want to revisit. Have you already started thinking about the possibilities of where the characters could go?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's no. I really love where it's a story I was so eager to tell. The ending, which is quite a thing in the movie, came very early in the development of the story, that it should twist completely in the last 2 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
And it's something I'm very excited about being able to continue that story, because that's a different story. That's a very different movie than the first one was, but with potentially the same actor, potentially the same characters, without spoiling anything. And it's just so that would be. It was always meant to be the first act in a 3-part story. So there is like a general idea where a second movie could go. But it's, as you said, I'm staring down at several movies currently, and we just lost a whole year basically, at least, waiting for those movies to reappear. So when that could happen, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be so frustrating. I mean, last year you were over here in the UK, you were at Frightfest, and Frightfest is happening soon, as are other festivals, not just here in the UK, but worldwide, and they're mostly going online. And, these are things that you would have appeared at, and you could have been there with Mortal as well, and unfortunately that's not going to happen. Well, it has given you some time to do some writing, spend time with family, I guess, and do some more things to relax a little bit before it all hopefully kicks off again soon, and you can throw yourself back into the movie making business.
Yeah, no, it has been good to be with family and to stay at home a little bit, because I was expecting to spend this entire year abroad, essentially. So that was has been a very good thing. And yes, I'm developing so many movies currently that I'm spending my nights on Skype and with producers and with the producers on the projects I'm working on, and the writers, and tweaking. And we have Scary Stories 2, we have the Last Voyage of the Demeter, and not least the Long Walk, the Stephen King movie.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, exciting times ahead, most definitely. Now, I know we're coming up to the time. I do want to thank you again, and quite genuinely, André, every film that I've watched of yours I have thoroughly enjoyed. So, of course, I'm looking forward to more from you. Long may you continue and make many, many more of them. And hopefully you'll come back on the show again soon, and we'll talk about future movies that you're making and go in depth a bit more about everything else that you've already made. That would be great.
Yeah, that would be a pleasure. Really great talking with you.
Right. Well, for the sake of the edit, we shall say goodbye. But thanks again, André.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.